A lot can happen in a decade. Dynasties can rise, and they can fall.
Michigan makes a stand!
Miracles may be witnessed. Tears can be shed from joy or from pain. Dreams can be crushed, or they can come true.
Yo, what's happening, everybody? Episode 55, College Football Rush is here yet again for another week, man. I am super busy at the house right now. We are moving, and Friday is moving day for us. So, as you can, well, you can't tell because I haven't really worked on this side of the room yet. But if you saw my living room, if you saw my kitchen, you would see nothing but stacked boxes and just stuff everywhere, man. So it's going to be a crazy weekend for me. I hate moving. I'm sure if you guys have ever moved, it is super crazy, and I don't wish it on anybody unless you know unless this is your very first venture. Then I think everybody should at least get one of the moves knocked out. But anyways, everybody's favorite couch quarterback here, Dante. If you're new to the show, this is our college football weekly show that we talk about what we feel like are important topics to go into the next week from what happened the past weekend, if it is football season. So yeah, man, I can't wait to get into this one this week because we got some spicy ones, man. Giant killer team brewing. I'm sure you guys have an idea of who this team is, but we're gonna go ahead and break down who I think a giant killer is in college football and why everybody should put this team on their radar. Alabama, their rushing game is struggling, and it could be their Achilles heel down the road. We're going to get into that. Arch Manning, could this be the game where he kind of arises and shows everybody like, yeah, I'm actually a good quarterback? They're playing Georgia this week, so we'll see how that is, and we'll break that down. Game of the week, and then, we're going to end this out with our Week 12 predictions and everything as we do every single week, man. So we got a lot to get into today. So shout out to the chat, man. I see Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. See my man Big Mac 2K say congratulations on the house and happy Wednesday. Yeah, I had to move this one up to Wednesday because it just was too chaotic yesterday for me as far as getting things packed. But I'm in a nice little stopping point where I can, it's just easier to rack up both shows in one day instead of spending 2 days to do the show. So appreciate you guys rocking out with us because right after this, me and Logan are going to do NFL Rush for you guys this week as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into it. And if you guys are going to rewatch this, hey, I appreciate everybody that always rewatches the replays of the show as well. So shout out to the replay gang. Let's get into the first topic, man. Which is Texas Tech is college football's kryptonite. If you have watched anything that they've done over these last 12 weeks, it has been nothing short of remarkable for their team. The only game that they lost was, of course, against Arizona State, where Will Hammond had to actually come in and step in place for Baron Morton while he was out with an injury. I think Baron was actually supposed to be out longer than he actually was, and then Will Hammond ended up getting hurt. And then they had my boy Mitch Griffiths. If anybody remembers Mitch Griffiths, he was the actual quarterback for Wake Forest a couple years ago, and now he's the backup here at Texas Tech. But yeah, man, it seemed to have, I don't want to say turn their ugly head. It's turning ugly for a lot of other teams when this team is firing all cylinders. And it was kind of, I don't want to say a slow burn, but it's almost like just watching Voltron just come together, right? Like the pieces are starting to fit all at the right moment. And it kind of starts with that defense, which we'll get into a little later. But Baron Morton comes back off of that injury, and by all accounts, they're winning games and things are looking decent. And he at the beginning of the season, a lot of people just didn't want to mention that he was in Heisman contention. Like, if you looked at his numbers through the first 4 weeks of the season, it was hard pressed to say that, this guy doesn't deserve to be, in Heisman talks. And, he's a really good quarterback. And I think going into this draft, if he decides to declare, I think these are one of the quarterbacks that we should really be looking at in the NFL draft, which we're not there yet. When the end of December, January hits, we'll start to get into more of that. As y'all know here, ECG is the ultimate place where you come in and learn about the prospects for the NFL draft. But also on the other side of that, when we're breaking down the offense, we got to think about a top 20 running back. I believe he's at like number 16, 17, something somewhere in there in total yardage, which is Cameron Dickey. But Cameron Dickey's one of those old school type of running backs that's going to slap you in the mouth every time he runs the ball. And this offense goes how he goes, it seems like, as of late. And it's almost like the running game and the passing game have now made this marriage that's kind of hard to stop. And then you got two receivers in 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝘀 and Caleb Douglas, who both have over 500 yards receiving at this point in time. And both receivers are in the top 96 of wide receivers as far as receiving touchdowns. And so you look at their numbers versus a lot of other guys in the country. I believe they have a 400-yard receiver, which we'll get into here a little later to make a point, and Reggie Virgil, who's been really, really good. But we'll get to him here in a little bit. But this whole team is coming together, and both of those receivers are really, really good. And then you go over to the defensive side of the ball, which is where most of the money gets made for Texas Tech. And this is why I think in college football right now that they're the kryptonite to a lot of teams, and they should be feared. Look, Jacob Rodriguez, if you don't have him at least getting a Heisman vote right now in your Heisman, you're really kidding yourself. The guy's statistics are great, and if he's not the best linebacker in the country, he's 1B on a lot of people's list. There may be another guy that may be more talented to him, but as far as his numbers say that he's the best. Shout out to my man Austin Romaine down there at Kansas State. He gets a couple votes from me too. But then you look at the whole unit that's just been going crazy, and it's mostly that linebacker and defensive edge crew. You have Romello Height, and then David Bailey, who I believe has like 12 or 13 sacks at this point. He's been going absolutely haywire. Ben Roberts has been a solid addition too, being one of the leaders in tackles for this team. Look, this whole defensive front is absolutely remarkable, man. And a lot of these guys are guys that have been there and stuck with Texas Tech and were recruited there. And so you go over to their head coach, and Joey McGuire. He's doing something that Coach Prime in Colorado can't seem to do. Not only do they go in the portal, have some of the best and highest rated, portal classes, but they also build from within. They get the depth where they need to get the depth, and they move their team forward. They progressively move their team forward, right? They get guys like we mentioned before in Reggie Virgil. He was their wide receiver number 3, 400 yards, 400-plus yards and 5 touchdowns at this point, and he comes from the MAC. He comes from up there in Miami of Ohio, and he's been an awesome piece for them. David Bailey, the guy that we talked about, that's been a to me at this point in time, he might be better than Ruben Bain, and a lot of people are not talking about it, but he comes over from Stanford. Then you get Romello Height. We mentioned him, the other edge rusher. He comes over from Georgia Tech, so he makes a progressive move as well at this point in time, as far as, I guess, if you want to look at the rankings. And then you get defensive tackles and Lee Hunter that comes over from UCF that transfer within the same division. And they reach back out into the MAC, and they go and get Skylar Gill-Howard from Northern Illinois, who was part of that crew last year that upset Notre Dame. And so, as a whole, Texas Tech is just full of superstars, homegrown recruits, and a program that likes to build within, and then also, has a lot of depth on their team. if you want to get into more of how good their defense is, I got the numbers here, man, and it's pretty staggering on how good that they've actually been this season in particular. Defensive EPA on early downs, they're number 1. Third and fourth down success rate allowed, they're number 12 in the country. Rushing yards allowed per game, they're 3rd. They only allow 73.8 yards a game. Defensive stop rate, they're number 2 in the country, 82.1. Forced fumbles, they have 16 and they're number 1. You know, to me, this is the perfect blend of a great defense. When they say defense is your best offense, this is like the best that you. This is the best combination of both. They don't have a overpowered offense, but they have an offense that's good enough where you have to respect them. And then their defense gets the other offense off the field to put the ball back in their hands to continuously give them chances. They're not afraid to take chances downfield with Baron Morton, and as you could tell with, 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝘀 and the boys, they've been really good at that. Right now, they're number 3 in passing yards in the Big 12. Number 1 being those guys up there at Baylor, right? Sawyer Robertson and the boys are going crazy. And this is one other thing to point out. They play with heart. They play with passion, all that intangible stuff. When describing the team, they have all that. But one thing that I wanted to note is like Baron Morton's been banged up for 2 years straight. Remember, he was recovering from a shoulder injury he played with last year. Going into this year, there's a lot of question marks around, like, is he fully healthy? Gets himself hurt again this season, and then still continuously trying to put that team on his back. I am a super fan of what Baron and those guys like to do, right? So as long as he takes the mantle and moves it forward, and Cameron Dickey can keep it up, and their defensive back unit can just play good enough to shut down those receivers game to game, we might be looking at a deep push from a Texas Tech team that I told you guys at the beginning of the season that I was really excited to watch. And a lot of that is actually coming to fruition, and it's pretty exciting to see. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But to me, they are the kryptonite of college football. And not to add insult to injury here for a lot of people, but just think about where we are right now in the landscape of college football, and tell me that the Big 12 just doesn't have they have the best quarterbacks, and it just reminds me so much of the Pac-12 a couple years ago before all those teams that transferred out. It's a great thing to see, and I'm excited to watch their full progression for the rest of the year for sure. Let me see. Let's get into Logan's comment. Dante's Inferno. What's up, bro? Bain is like my 4th D lineman at this point. Man, I want to see him play 3-tech. Look, if Abdul Carter has been up and down in the NFL and he has extreme bend, then a guy like Ruben Bain, who doesn't have the speed to bend like that, is going to have issues. Again, watching mock drafts at this point just make me shake my head, and a lot of those mocks are choosing Ruben Bain number 1 overall. I don't understand. And I mean, I think I like Ruben Bain more than I liked Abdul Carter because of his versatility, but number 1 overall, that's an extreme reach to me. Texas Tech is like Arizona State last year. Facts. Yeah, Arizona State was really good, but Texas Tech has been one of those teams that have always utilized the portal like over the last 3 years, and we're like, can they get there? Can they get there? Can they get there? Can they get there? And then a Tyler Shook injury happens there, and then a Baron Morton injury happens there, and it kind of pulls their team back. And then they had a good backup with Will Hammond, and then he gets hurt. So there's a lot of things that are working against Texas Tech at this point. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. If you guys are in the chat, man, put a thumbs up for me, just to let me know that you guys are listening in and enjoying what you're hearing. I appreciate everybody that is rocking out with us. This is going to be a double header today, but we got to get into the next topic, which is Alabama's running game is terrible, bro. It is. It definitely is. And it's more reason why I have Ty Simpson as my number one quarterback as far as like draft eligible quarterbacks, as I don't, Darren Mintz is my number one quarterback in college right now. But as far as the draft eligible quarterbacks stand, Ty Simpson has been awesome by all regards. And now if you talk about a guy that's like absolutely been backpacking his team, that look no further than what Ty Simpson's been doing. Look, and it starts with this man right here, Jan Miller. Jan Miller has been a huge disappointment. 321 yards this year alone. All these running backs on this team have been subpar. This running game has been subpar. This offensive line with Caden Proctor has been subpar. Subpar, not subpar. I guess we're just gonna make up a word. Subpar, whatever. It's been terrible. They're ranked number 12 in passing, but they're ranked 113th out of 136 schools in rushing offense. This is not going to bring you success. Kalen DeBoer, you remember when you had Dylan Johnson up there at Washington, when you guys went to a national championship and he was a big part of your year and a big part of why people wanted to draft him, because that dude ran like there was no tomorrow? Yeah, what we thought was we were going to get this from Jan Miller. And there's no quarterback in the country that's lifting this team more this year than Ty Simpson as far as putting him on his back. And I know we mentioned that before, but I just want to reiterate. And I understand Jan Miller has been battling some injuries, was injured at the beginning of the year during the Florida State game and everything like that. But again, if he's not fully healthy, then you have depth there to go ahead and put another guy in, and then you let some of your depth leave. What was the reason why Justice Haynes got up and left for Michigan? I'll never understand. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall with his offensive line and knew that, hey, I'm going to go up there to Michigan where I know Sharon Moore has been known to build offensive lines and put them in the NFL, and I'm going to be running behind a good offensive line regardless of who the quarterback and receivers are. I know that I'm going to cook personally, right? Because he's ranked number 18 in the country in rushing yards right now for Michigan, who's having a pretty decent season, but again, he's having a lot of success. Last year, both of these guys were a big reason why I thought that Alabama was going to have a lot of success, and I just kept clamoring on the fact that, well, they got Justice Haynes and they got Jan Miller. What the hell is going on? Can these two guys, bring the heat like they wanted to, right? And then he transfers out. Now we got Jan Miller, and we thought that they were going to be, so good last year. So, but at the same time, I don't blame him for transferring out of Alabama. I think long term, as far as their running game is concerned, this is going to be their Achilles heel moving forward. And the reason why I say that is because if you can't run well in college football, the odds are not in your favor. And if we just want to look at championship runs, you can't afford not to run the ball and win championships. Ohio State last year ran the ball well. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard was able to manipulate. Michigan a couple years ago, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, J.J. McCarthy was able to do a couple of different things. All he did was hand the ball off that year. Then even go, a little bit before that, and the Michigan team that won a national championship, right? James Cook and Zamir White were on that team. Two-headed monster there. So, yeah, if they would have had Justice Haynes and Jan Miller on the same team this year, I would have felt way differently, because he would have had another security blanket and a guy that actually is super duper talented. I think ultimately they could lose against a team that has been running the ball better and better and better every single week, and that's Georgia. Georgia had their best running performance of the year last week. And these two teams, we always say year to year, but really and truly, something happens with Vanderbilt, a couple other losses that happen to Texas A&M in the future maybe, could potentially land both of these teams back into a matchup where they're going against each other, and Alabama ends up losing in this game. And Kirby Smart ends up getting his revenge because they can't run the ball well, and that's one of the strengths of Georgia this time, and they're just going to play a little bit better in their running game and their defensive back unit to be able to stop Ty Simpson, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and Isaiah Horton moving forward. So, yeah, it's been terrible by all accounts, guys, and we can't walk through life. We can't walk through this season pretending, that Bama doesn't have a problem. They really do. They might be the best team when it comes to, like, if you can't stop their passing game and their defense is decent, but without this running game, I just don't see how they make it far. And it seems like that for a lot of different teams. And the next team we'll talk about also has kind of a deficiency there, but I think it's just an identity crisis. But yeah, Bama's running game is terrible, guys. All right, well, there's one guy that could propel himself back into the conversation of quarterbacks, and that's Arch Manning. I don't think this is a very unorthodox take, and I know that, but I just need you guys to sit in the car with me, and let's ride and have a conversation about Arch Manning. Arch Manning goes against Georgia this week, and this team has been playing better as of recently, outside of 2 games, but Arch Manning has not played bad. The last 4 games, he's had 972 yards. He's 87 for 133, 65% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns in the air, 1 interception, and 1 rushing touchdown. So he's had a really good 4-game stretch, which they proceeded to win all those games. They beat number 6 ranked Oklahoma. They beat number 9 ranked Vandy. And also with the looming distractions that they've heard of with Steve Sarkisian's looming rumor of him wanting to go back to the NFL and try his hand there yet again. And even the distractions with his own play, right? Like, I don't think anybody's sitting up here thinking that Arch Manning is the best thing since sliced bread. But I think he's one of those quarterbacks like Lenore Sellers that could do just to sit behind another year, wait for all these distractions to leave as far as this quarterback class coming up, let those guys leave, and then try to compete against the same thing's happening with a guy like DJ Lagway too. But let these guys try to build up their own reputations without the first year starter title, right? Like, yeah, we've come in for some games and we won some games and we'll look really good in places, the DJ Lagways of the world and all those guys, and let them just play ball from start to finish. And then let's give our opinion on where we think they're going to be. But what Arch Manning needs to do is finish this year out strong. Yeah, did he go to overtime against Kentucky? Yeah. Did he go to overtime against Mississippi State? Yeah. And those teams have looked better than they had at the beginning of the season. So I don't think those are 2 wins to scoff at either. But that's another team that has not been running the ball well. They just are stuck. Wisner's been their top bell cow, with Arch trying to make some things happen here and there. But they're better than some other teams that run in the ball, i.e. Alabama, right? So that could actually prepare them a little bit forward because they actually can get a 60 or 70 yard game out of the running back, while Jan Miller is struggling to get 20 yards a game at this point. I think they can beat Georgia. Georgia's ranked number 56 in pass defense, but the run defense is number 18. So that's where they're going to have their problems. he could propel himself into a unique conversation as well. Had the hype, failed, got himself back in the conversation, and it's kind of why, like, literally riding the wave of, I'm a pretty good quarterback, but I'm not one of those guys that you mentioned in the conversation, the guys that you want on your team right now at big programs. And I like the fact that Steve Sarkisian always stuck to his guns. Like, he did it with Quinn, even though I think with the oblique injury and things like that, you have your thoughts around that, but I think Quinn was trying to play the tough guy in the situation, and got us like, I need to put the team on my back. Which, the way that Steve Sarkisian handles a lot of his business is really good from a quarterback's perspective. Look, you're gonna ride out with me. You're not gonna bench me because of injury. You're gonna give me chance after chance after chance to lead this team until you really have no choice and you have to pull the trigger for somebody else. So from Arch Manning's perspective, for people that think that he was just gonna get benched, we already knew the deal. There was never gonna be a time where Arch Manning was gonna come in and get benched, especially if he wasn't really turning the ball over a ton, right? Ryan Wingo has been, when we talked about him at the beginning of the season too, has been a bright spot for him. He has 5 touchdowns so far. He's averaging 19 yards per catch and is the leading wide receiver on Texas right now. And he's 7 yards away from the 600 mark, which at this point in time, you know, you would love guys to get into, be close to 1,000. We have some receivers that are at 1,000 yards right now, but the way that Texas struggled week 1 and the way that they were kind of mediocre throughout the season up until now, you know, I guess you could still say they've been mediocre, but they found themselves in the top 10 spot according to the College Football Playoff Committee. Jack Injuries is one of those guys that is a tight end that's interesting, and I think he can make plays, but he has to be gunner helm for them in this next matchup. If you watch those games against Tennessee, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss, even though statistically Georgia, it doesn't say Georgia struggles against tight ends, but the tight ends like Miles Kisselman and Seydou Traore and Daquan Wright from Ole Miss, these guys have 30-plus yards receiving, but the way that they're getting open and adding easy first downs for their quarterbacks is a big concern of why I think Texas can propel themselves into getting a win against Georgia if he can be a little bit of what Gunnar Helm can be. And Arch Manning has to feel comfortable with throwing to him, because I don't see a world where there's not going to be pressure in his face. So he's going to need to be athletic and get the ball downfield. But there's, you know, the SEC has been interesting because you find yourself with so many teams in the top 10, including Texas, who, like I said, have been struggling. So they're in a prime position as far as ranking to propel themselves up. They're in a prime position to be able to have gotten a lot of these tough games under their belt. They, unfortunately for them, are going against a team that's running the ball really, really well, but that could fall on its face again, and them still trying to find who that's going to be. But Gunnar Stockton is going to struggle as well because their defense has been, you know, fairly decent this year as well. But more so on the Arch Manning thing, he can propel himself forward. You know, what he needs to do is to stay focused, get the ball out quick, and be accurate and not force things downfield. Because I think when he forces things downfield, this is when the turnovers happen. You haven't really seen that. He's been really safe with the ball as of late, and they need to make this very friendly as far as spreading out the ball for Arch. As long as Arch is looking for other people not named Ryan Wingo in this game, I think that's where they're going to have success. And I would love to see him use his legs more. Like, you know, what's the problem in being, you know, the Mannings are not the athletic bunch. I think we all know that, right? But with somebody like Arch, who has been super athletic and has shown the athletic ability, why not be that way too? Show Texas something a little different. You know, make them get reminded of the Vince Young days. And, you know, if that can happen and you can still rely on your arm, because we've seen Arch be super accurate downfield, he just struggles with consistency at this point. But if he propels himself into conversation after a Georgia win, if that's what it comes down to, don't be surprised. We told you here first. All right, so game of the week is Oklahoma at Alabama. The obvious matchup here is for us to go and just talk about the quarterbacks completely, right? 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝗀𝗏 seems like if he's not at full health, he's getting very, very close to being there after hurting his hand, right? He's looked better every week progressively since he's come back. They've had their struggles, of course, but I think Ben Arbuckle and that offense are really starting to get those things together. Will Oklahoma's front seven give Bama fits? You know, Ty Simpson, we talked about it a little bit earlier. That running game sucks. Are they going to be able to put it all together and be one of the best in the country like we've seen them be all season? We've seen Oklahoma take people down in the red zone and just beat, or in their side of the field near their end zone, and just beat them down into submission, where it's damn near causing a safety on every single play within the 10-yard line. So Ty Simpson, to me, we've seen Heisman moments happen for Fernando Mendoza last week after throwing the ball at the back of the end zone to Omar Cooper. We sat here and told y'all how good Omar Cooper is. He's one of the best receivers in the country. And Ty Simpson can have that Heisman moment in this game. Who's it going to be to? Hopefully it's somebody like Jeremy Bernard, who's been in his back pocket all year long and has proven himself to be one of the better receivers that people just still don't talk about, but is going to fly under the radar, and somebody's going to find him in the second round, and he's going to be really good for their team. Outside of the last game against LSU, Ryan Williams has been playing better. You know, he's getting close to that 100-yard game that he's been searching for. I think he got it in week 2 because he's only had one 100-yard game this year. But I expect him, and I think the country is expecting, because of being on the college football, 26 cover, and, him and Jeremiah Smith being connected in this weird way because they were the two freshmen that came in and became phenom. Most consistently been Jeremiah Smith. Ryan Williams had that game against Georgia last year. Like, people are looking for that Ryan Williams to be back for Bama. And we just have to assume that Bama's running game in this specific game will be non-existent as well. And so who's going to step up to the plate? Opponents' points per game for Bama is number 12. They only allow 17 points per game. Oklahoma's at number 8. They only allow 15 points per game. And so this is going to be a defensive battle. I think the defense is kind of negates itself, right? Who can be more consistent? Who can step up to the plate? Is it 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗏 or is it Ty Simpson? Is it Oklahoma's running game or is it Alabama's running game? Who's the one that's going to come out on top? This game is going to come down to Alabama surprising in the running game, and both defenses playing well, in my opinion. I think this is the game that Alabama knows that they have to run the ball well, but also, again, everybody's going to be looking at the two quarterbacks in this matchup. And when it comes down to who's going to win this game, we, across the board, me, Don, and Logan, think that Alabama pulls this one out. We're big fans of Ty Simpson and what he's been doing. Not saying that we're not big fans of 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗏, because I talked about 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘀 ad nauseum. It was just unfortunate that he hurt his hand a couple of weeks ago and was kind of unfortunately rushed back on the field in an important matchup, a couple of weeks ago. But here it is, man. Give me Alabama, give Don Alabama, give Logan Alabama, and I hope you guys, this is one that you're going to want to watch out. This is the matchup that we were hoping that we would have seen, like, and the old school Oklahoma teams coming back, but now they're in the SEC playing against Alabama. But going down to Tuscaloosa is going to be a tall task for them. I'm expecting to see 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘀𝘀 run like crazy, and I'm expecting, Ty Simpson to have his Heisman moment in this game. It should be a pretty exciting game, and I actually think it's going to be pretty low scoring as well. So if I had to give a score prediction as far as college football is concerned, I think this comes down to a field goal. Alabama kicks a field goal, wins this one 2017, and yeah, they propel themselves even further towards the top. They're sitting right there at number 4. You know, one of those 3 teams, Texas A&M, Ohio State, or Indiana, has to lose for them to move up, but they're in a comfortable spot being the SEC team that's right there in second place to Texas A&M. So yeah, a lot of good competition is happening right there at the top. And who's to say, as far as those 3 teams outside of Texas A&M, who has the better resume? Does Ohio State have a better resume than Alabama? I don't think so. Does Indiana have a better resume than Alabama? I don't think so. You could comfortably have put Texas A&M at number 1, and if they win against Oklahoma, you can propel Alabama to number 2 and drop those other 2 guys down. But I get it. Undefeated teams are what's always going to be at the top, even though they always preach about strength of schedule, which is crazy. All right, week 12 predictions, guys. Let's get into these, and then we'll get you your bets after that as well. Appreciate everybody in the chat hanging out, man. I see you got 7 to 10 people consistently checking out the stream, man. Sorry about the delay to this stream, but we'll keep pushing through. If we're looking at the ACC side of things, Duke versus Virginia in this matchup. Look, we got Virginia winning this game. Darren Mensah is trying to carry that team as much as possible. Not saying that he's not a good quarterback. I think statistically he's going to put up a lot of numbers and he's going to continue to propel them forward. But I think Chandler Morris and that offense and the way that they're running the ball right now and the way that they're playing defensive football against teams, I think Virginia goes and pull this one out. If Duke wins, it's going to be because Darren Mensah is just that damn good. UCF versus Navy. I'm sorry, USF versus Navy. We have USF winning this game. I was about to say UCF. I thought it was USF. Made the graphic wrong at first. I corrected it. USF, man. Byron Brown, the way that they're running that ball right now and the way that they're being coached is they're just going in there and they're smacking people in the mouth. Byron Brown last week was damn near perfect if you watch. And then Navy is missing their best weapon for an extended amount of time with Blake Horvath not being there. So this is where we're going to start to see what Navy's really about as far as their depth. But, man, Blake Horvath is a huge blow for them in that game. Cincy and Arizona, man. Brendan Sorsby and the boys have been going crazy, running the ball really, really well. But Arizona has been very surprising on defense. I believe they're still number 2 in the Big 12. They were like top 5 in the country for like the first couple of weeks. I mean, they were incredible, and so was their offense was like top 10 for a lot of the year. I believe in Noah Fifita. I believe in that team. And what they want to do, and their offensive line has been playing out of their mind this year, keeping Noah very, very healthy and upright this year because he looks way different than he did last year. I think they just have enough juice on both sides of the ball to not only being able to stop that running game for Cincy, but to be able to have some offensive firepower to get a close game win against Cincy. Don and Logan agree that they agree on Cincy winning that game. I got Arizona. USF versus Iowa, man. Old school matchup right here. I think a high-powered offense versus a defense. That's what we've known Iowa to be. But Gronowski's there, coming over from the FCS. He's been really, really good for their team. I mean, probably the best quarterback that they've seen in I don't even know how many years. Didn't CJ Beathard play for them like years ago or something like that? Either way it goes, man. Let me go back and restart this. My bad, guys. Get through my graphics here. So you got USF, Arizona. Yep. So I have Iowa winning this game in a close matchup. I think they just have enough juice to stop USC. Can King step up to the plate and be the running back that they need? Can their running back core actually show that they have a lot more depth? And at the beginning of the year, they showed their depth a lot. 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘶 has two of the best receivers in the country. Mekhi Lemon is an absolute talent that a lot of people talk about, but they don't talk about enough, in my opinion. And 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘶 is just silently just flying under the radar, just doing what he does at the quarterback position and showing that he is a true power forward quarterback. But Don has USC, and me and Logan have Iowa winning a close one. I think this is a low-scoring game, man. Jacksonville State versus Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State, I believe, is still undefeated. Jacksonville State is starting to kick it into high gear with that running game that they have. And all of us are picking Jacksonville State to upset Kennesaw State. I believe Kennesaw State is the favorites in this game. And this one was a harder one to pick, man, because I'm a believer in Kennesaw State and what they're doing. But I think Jacksonville State's running game is just a little bit too much to handle at this point in time. So we got them winning there. Ball State has been surprising against, this whole year in the MAC. People thought that maybe they're going to be the worst team. And Eastern Michigan just has been squeaking out close game after close game as far as the ones that they've won. I think this is another one. There's no exception. I think their defense is good enough to stop Ball State. San Diego State took a loss to Fresno State, I believe it was, which was very unexpected. Boise State has taken a loss, taken an unexpected loss. People thought that they were going to be the front runners, and Sean Lewis comes out and has these guys rolling. Look, we're all picking San Diego State to bounce back after taking their loss, and I think it's going to be hell to pay. Love Spencer Danielson and what he's doing up there at Boise State, but give me Sean Lewis and the Sons of Montezuma to win this game. We talked about Georgia, Texas, and I told you how Texas could win this game, but I think Georgia is a little bit too much. I think they understand how good their running backs are and that they're going to continue to put their foot on the gas when it comes to that. And then also free up Gunnar Stockton for a little bit because, even though his number says that he's been one of the better quarterbacks in college football, if you watched him, it seems like, man, if he's got another year, he might need to stay. Coastal Carolina, another team that we thought were going to be complete dog dookie, and they've turned themselves around. They got the free snacks and stuff at Brooks Stadium. And so if you live down there in Conway near Myrtle Beach, go ahead and watch you a Coastal Carolina game. I'm sure you can get tickets real cheap and get you some free get you some free snacks. But we have Coastal Carolina winning this game. They've been very, very surprising this year. And we're definitely thinking that them and Marshall were probably going to be the two worst teams this year. And they've surprised. They've surprised us for sure. So those are your Week 12 predictions. As far as the bets, man, I got Minnesota plus 25.5. I think this is easy money. I think Oregon is battling some injuries with Dante Moore, DeCorian Moore as well at the wide receiver position is a little banged up, and they're struggling on the defensive side of the ball. We thought that they were going to be better than they actually have been, and their offense is really the ones that are keeping them in games. So we'll see. I think Minnesota's playing really, really well with PJ Fleck as their coach still. 25.5, I think, is easy money. Utah State plus 6 against UNLV. Look, both of these teams have been playing super, super hard all year long. They're averaging like 20 to 30 points a game. And the scorers and the way that they play teams have been very, very similar this year. Give me Utah State plus 6. I think that's easy money as well. Give me the under 52.5 Kansas State at Oklahoma State. Look, Oklahoma State is not good. They're not. They scored 10 to 14 points a game, but Kansas State doesn't really put their foot on the gas either. And so when I look at this, Kansas State's averaging like 30 points a game plus the 14. That's 44 points. That's not, take the under of 52.5. I think people are giving the expectation that Kansas State is going to go in there and absolutely dog walk them. And I don't think that's the case. As far as our G5, over 64.5 USF at Navy. Regardless if Blake Horvath is the quarterback or not, I think the way that they play football down there at USF is they're just going to continue to score points. So, Alex Golesh is just going to dial things up for Byron Brown to at least get him into Heisman contention at this point in time. So why not run the score up against Navy while they're missing their starting quarterback? Give me the 64.5. And then our money line picks, man. This one was tough. Give me Utah at Baylor. I think Utah is just a better team at this point, and they had the defense to be able to stop Baylor's offense. And then Marshall at Georgia State. Love Marshall's quarterback. Love everything that they're doing. They're kind of a flip-floppy team, but I think they're better than Georgia State. So if you're going to put money on the money line, give me Marshall moving forward. But that's been the show, everybody. Appreciate everybody that came through and watched this one, man. If you going to watch the replay or have watched the replay of this by the time you get to this section, I appreciate you always supporting the show. We'll be back with you guys here in about a little less than an hour to run through NFL Rush with you guys. But this has been Dante, everybody's favorite couch quarterback. Appreciate you guys, man. We'll talk to you guys here in a little bit. Peace.